Joan Quinn, a member of the California Arts Council and Beverly Hills Arts Commission, is the former West Coast editor of Andy Warhol's Interview magazine and society editor of the Herald Examiner. Her cover stories can be read in Venice and Detour magazines, and she is a contributing editor to California Apparel News. For the next half hour, Joan will bring you inside news and views on society, art, film, and the exhilarating worlds of these multifaceted people. Here is Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're talking to Willy Van Rui, a former model who's designed shoes, clothes, and accessories. Things changed when she left her native Holland at 23 and exploded on the London scene. The then shy, silent blonde was compared to Greta Garbo. We're surrounded on the set today by all of the shoes and bags that Willy has produced in the last several years. But Willy, when you got to London as this Greta Garbo lookalike, what happened?
Well, I went to see an agency and I said, I like to be a model. And they said, yeah, sure. And they sent me to see people at Vogue. And there, I asked the head editor to see Helmut Newton because I liked his pictures and I was sure he would like me. And she said, yeah, he's coming next week. So when he came, he took me on a job. Yeah.
But how did you know Helmut Newton? I mean, you were very young at the time.
Yeah, but I looked in the magazines and I saw his pictures and I liked them.
So when you went on the job with Helmut, was that the end of your London modeling career?
No, that was the beginning. That was the beginning. And I stayed even less than a year in London. And the last, when I had a job in Morocco with Helmut Newton for the Sunday Times, and that's where I met Salvador, my husband.
Marone, who painted this wonderful painting on the set.
Right. So then we met, and I didn't go back to London after that, no.
And then when did you get to Paris?
Ooh, that was after South America. We went to South America. We stayed a year in Brazil. And then we stayed a year in Ibiza. You know about Ibiza? Yeah,
yes.
You heard about Ibiza.
That was in the 60s or early 70s?
No, this was 69 in the 70s. We stayed there 2 years. And we went to New York. We stayed a year in New York, where I was with Eileen Ford, and where Salvador was painting. And so after that, we went to Paris.
When you got to Paris, did you do runway work, or were you just doing a print?
Well, in the beginning, only print, but that was the first time that Yves Saint Laurent decided to use, models from pictures in the runway. So actually, that was the first.
So he discovered you from the print work.
Right.
And then how long did you work for Saint Laurent?
Oh, many years. Yeah, like 10 years, no? And it was great at that time. Imagine we were with Grace Jones, Jerry Hall, Pat Cleveland. Yeah.
But, they talk about the models today being superstars, but they were superstars then.
We absolutely were. Just, they didn't write so much about it, but we certainly were superstars.
So you were working with that whole group who all gone on to do other things.
Right.
Did you ever dream of being a designer while you were on the runway?
Well, I always wanted to be a designer, from when I was very little. I mean, I always did that. And I knew, I always was designing my own clothes, and I knew one day I was going to do it professionally.
You did give some of your designs to Saint Laurent, I think.
Yes. Well, I worked like 2 years designing for him, the accessories.
Were you still modeling at the time?
No.
So you had finished your modeling career and then?
Right. Because I had a shop in Paris. You know about that?
The shop. Tell us about the shop, because you had a shop with one design.
Right.
How could you have a shop?
One day I had this idea, to make one dress and a pants that would fit everybody, So it was like a pants with an elastic in the belt and a big tunic dress of very nice material that came from China or from Poland. And so everybody could fit it. It was a great success because of the colors of the, yeah.
So everything, each piece was almost one of a kind, or did you do?
No. But although it would change, like inside the collar, it would be a different color, you know, or the turns of the sleeve or things like that.
And how long did that last?
The shop? Mm-hmm. Well, the shop lasted about 2 years, you know. But the thing is, we got very known because we got so much publicity.
I know. I read in one of the clips that you gave me that Mrs. Vreeland called.
Right, she had a red one, of course.
She had a red one?
Right.
Yeah.
And so comes a moment, you know, that you either get backing or you cannot do it anymore because it gets too expensive. You can, you know, you have to do more, produce more than the money you have.
So even with the backing of Diana Vreeland from Vogue magazine at the time and people at Harper's Bazaar, and I know the French magazines were doing photos of you, it still was impossible to continue.
Yeah, it was very difficult because then the next collection, we had to pay the materials in advance. And that was lots. You know, we had Bergdorf and Goodman was going to do a window, Macy's, Bloomingdale's, all the department stores, Bendel, everybody. And we couldn't do it. It was too much.
So what did you do? Leave Paris?
No, not then, exactly. No, that's when I started to design for Yves Saint Laurent, more or less.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah.
So you were
And for Karl
designing...
Lagerfeld too, because he always asked me. Yeah.
So what were you doing? Accessory, glasses?
Oh
or
yeah, glasses,
jewelry?
umbrellas, materials, shoes, a lot of shoes. Gloves,
Fabric design?
bags. Yeah, a lot. I did a show for Karl Lagerfeld, a whole collection, and when I went to the show, I saw all these models coming out, you know, and material I had designed.
It was all your own fabric.
funny.
He was designing for Karl Lagerfeld then, or for Chloe?
No, Chloe.
He was designing for Chloe, and now he designs for Chanel.
Oh yes.
And his
so
own
many.
line.
And Chloe again, I heard.
Yeah.
Oh really?
He's a very talented and has a great eye, so obviously he saw that you could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it common for designers to have people on the outside bring them designs?
Very common. Of course, they can't do everything. No, it's too big, you know. Yeah, they do the main line, but then they buy ideas. Yeah.
Have to do that. But next, as I recall, you went to Spain.
Right. So that was very long in Paris, you know, like 10 years we were in Paris or more. And we wanted to change, see the sun, and somebody offered us a house in the south of Spain, which was marvelous. And there I had the idea to do shoes.
That's where this whole shoe thing came on, because that's how I really learned about you, was seeing your shoes in Santa Monica boutiques and in New York boutiques, Melrose Avenue. Very high scale, but very exciting. You use a lot of fabrics that other people wouldn't dream of using.
Right.
How did you get into that?
Well, I always look at fabrics because I love them, you know. And I just discovered these beautiful Spanish materials that, of course, you know, the Spanish don't see it anymore because they're used to it.
But to use
But like
stones,
this, you know, this material is typical Spanish material.
This fabric?
This fabric, yeah.
But to think of gold, is this an everyday shoe?
Oh yeah, for me, yes. Absolutely.
But with all this gold and...
Right, why not?
And what about this? This shoe with all these rhinestones and more gold?
Yeah, nice, no? A little bit of alegría, no, in the daytime.
Could you wear it in the daytime?
Sure, I do. I think absolutely, why not? You do.
I do. I'm very aware of your shoes that I've had for a long time. From what I understand, you actually went in to learn on the bench how to make shoes, and I think that's what this painting tells us about.
Right.
Salvador was there in the...
Well, this is the last of a shoe, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And it's design on it, yeah.
The shoe is in the back with one of your shoes on it?
Exactly.
And could you make a pair of shoes if you
yeah,
had
absolutely. Right, yeah. I did the patterns myself at the time, and yeah, of course, I could make a shoe.
Have you ever, when you were in Spain, did you design for royalty there?
No.
Anywhere in London?
Oh, I mean, you know, like I never designed for a royalty or a celebrity or movies, but they would come to my shop, you know, and they would buy my shoes. Yes.
So they did wear your
Yeah.
shoes. It wasn't that you went out and did that for them.
No, they would
What
buy
about our royalty, Hollywood royalty? Have you done that yet?
them. Wow, not yet, but if they would like me to, I'll be very pleased.
Tell me a little bit about the kind of person who wears your accessories.
You know, it's very different kind of persons. Like in the shop, the people who come, you know, like really young girls and even some clients of 70 or 80 years, you know.
Is that right?
Yeah, I cannot say what kind of, no.
Just
Yeah, shoe freaks.
shoe freaks. But are all of these new, or are some of these from the past?
Well, this is from the past. No, that's a very old model, this one here with the gold. And
Why don't you hold that?
yeah, these are more the last collection, yes.
The last one.
Yeah,
These are
most of
wonderful
them.
because this is a very contemporary
Right.
look right now.
Right. And then you can go on with that, changing the colors and the materials incredibly. Yeah.
And they're all, of course, just leather lined and
Oh yes,
beautifully,
of course, leather
beautifully made.
soles. And I usually make like 2 collections a year.
Oh, you do?
And each collection is like 20 or 24 models, depending.
We're going to have to leave in a minute, but every time I said something about Willy van Rooy, everyone thought I was talking about a man, Willy.
Right. Well, I'm Dutch, you know, and in Holland this is super normal name. Yeah.
It's just Willy. It's not
just Willy.
It's not the
No,
shortening for something.
No, in my case it's not, but it should. I think it's a shortening of Wilhelmina, of course, you know. Yeah.
But you were.
In my case, it's just Willy.
Well, we're going to say goodbye to Willy, and we're going to thank you very much for being with us, and we hope to have our viewers, when they see these extraordinary designs and shoe windows or shop windows around the world, to think of Willy van Rooy. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Thanks.
It's nice to be here.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with architect Steven Ehrlich. Steven has lectured throughout the United States as well as Asia and Africa. Models of his work have been exhibited in museums around the world, and he has a collection of awards, including several from the California Council AIA and LA's AIA design program. Steven lived in Africa for 6 years. How did that work influence, or how did that lifestyle influence your work, Steven?
Well, let me give you a little bit of background. I lived in Morocco for 2 years, and I worked as an architect in the Peace Corps from 1969 to 71, and then I traveled for a year in and around the Sahara, and then finally ended up in Nigeria, where I taught and did some projects there as well. And what I saw was I saw how people lived very harmoniously in delicate balance with their environment, and it was very exciting because really it was architecture without architects, and yet each response, each architectural solution, house type, was very much in tune and in harmony with the environment. So a house in the rainforest looked completely different from a house in the desert.
So did you bring that with you into your work?
I think so. I think what it does is it makes me want to look at each situation as a fresh and unique situation emanating from the climate, from the particular site, of course, and also from the client's kind of desires, wishes, and needs. So I try to treat every project almost as if it's a fresh canvas. And needless to say, I bring a whole bunch of history with it, and I believe that there is a signature to my work, or a lineage of thought that goes with it, but I really like to think that each project has an empirical beginning.
Did you go right out of school to the Peace Corps?
Fresh out of school.
What school did you go to?
To Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in New York.
And why did you choose that instead of going with a large firm?
Being on my own? Oh, well, after...
Or going traveling, actually, because you were gone, what, 7 or 8 years then?
Yeah,
altogether?
I was away for I was in Africa for 6 years over a 9-year period. Well, it started off actually back in 1969 when I graduated from college. I was looking for an alternative to the Vietnam War and also doing service for the country, and it was a good experience.
Did you always want to be an architect?
Definitely. Yeah, I used to build tree houses and lean-tos as a kid when I was 12 years old. My science fair project was a solar home. And so it's just I just noticed at an early age that I got high when I was building things, and I still do.
When you were away, did you actually get right in and build with them, or were you teaching them techniques?
I actually was more, I would say, in terms of technical aspects of how to build, I was probably learning more than I was teaching, and it was ironic because I was, in fact, teaching how they should look at their own roots, but then reinterpret those roots for new kinds of problems and building situations that, let's say, previously didn't exist.
And that's what you started doing on your own as you came here and started making big buildings. Did you go with a firm when you first came back, or with a group of?
For a while, yeah. And then in about 2 years, I always had this hunger to do my own work and to say what I wanted to say and to search for my own architecture, let's say, and so I've been doing that for a dozen years now on my own.
So what would the advantages be to be on your own or to be with a large group?
Well, you worry more if you're on your own. But I think everyone has to follow whatever path seems right for them. And
do you think you have more artistic leeway if you're on your own?
Yes, you do, but I must say architecture is a collaborative art, and that you have to, the leeway that you have is also part and parcel to the confidence and the types of clients that you attract. And you can't do something if that client won't allow you to do it, basically,
I see.
Or if you don't get that commission to take that chance or to go to that next step.
That was one of the things that I wanted to ask you about your clients. If you build a house for a person, one person, a personal situation, and you deal with that one person or two people that you're building the house for, or opposed to a commercial building where you have, how many people do you deal with in a commercial endeavor?
Well, from the client standpoint, I mean, they could vary. But what I find interesting is that typically when I'm doing a house, I find that in particular in Los Angeles, I'm really trying to create very tranquil and peaceful environments so that people, when they come home from the work environment, which is fairly chaotic and hectic and on the phone and the faxes and whatever, that when they do come home, I like the home environment to replenish their soul, and I'm interested in things like the sound of water, strong connections to nature, indoor-outdoor relationships.
You built your own home. You're living in it.
Yes.
And I don't know if you'll tell the truth, but does it work the way an architect thinks it's going to work?
It does, but I have 2 children, and it's louder than I thought it would be, the echoing of sound. But it does work, and we're happy there. Yeah.
And have you built a lot of single residences?
I have. I've done a lot of houses, and in fact, recently I just finished a house in Brentwood that is a large house on a wonderful piece of property, and I'm very excited about how the barrier between indoors and outdoors is able to dissolve.
Maybe that's what they were talking about when the design jury said that in your design award that you your work was an amalgam of Schindler and Neutra, but pushing LA modernism. What does that mean?
That was the house that they were referring to. Well, I'm a modernist. I work in a language of modern architecture. I've been influenced by Schindler. I've been influenced by a lot of other architects, Lou Kahn, Le Corbusier, Frank Lloyd Wright, and indigenous African builders as well.
Did you know any of those architects? Did you have a chance to
No.
work or go to workshops with?
Well, actually, I had met Lou Kahn on a couple of occasions before he passed away. Le Corbusier, no. Frank Lloyd Wright, no, of course. But only Lou Kahn, yeah. And that was exciting to hear him talk and to have met him.
Do you sit on panels with other contemporary architects?
Yeah, I'm occasionally I'm on a jury, and or a symposium. I give lectures from time to time.
Talking about the modernism, because you've been building several buildings in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles West Side, actually all over the city. And one of the really premier buildings that people have been talking about is the Sony Entertainment building.
Sony Music.
Sony Music.
In Santa Monica. Yes.
How did that happen? Did they come to you? Was it a contest?
Okay. Well, that was actually a very important commission in my career, because the project at first started off being a renovation of a series of industrial buildings. And I had some experience with those kinds of renovations. There was a design competition. I was one of 5, and I won the competition.
I see.
However, then, for various reasons, that whole project, which is a 100,000 square foot, fairly large, substantial project for me, it shifted to a vacant piece of property. And since I had already won the design competition, had gotten to know the client, I went basically across the street, and it was kind of a career vertical leap.
Oh, so it was like a 2-part. You did one part with him, then you did the second part, and I think you've got a third part.
Well, the third part that you're referring to is that currently I'm doing 2 projects for Sony Pictures Entertainment, which is in Culver City. And in reality, it's a whole, even though it's
different,
the Sony parent company, it's really a whole different entity. And I'm doing 2 wonderful projects for them. One is a child care center, and the other is their digital computer special effects.
What this building would be that we have?
It's this project right here. Yes.
One thing that you do, I know, you've worked a lot with artists, and you've brought artists into your projects. You brought Guy Dill into the music project.
Right. Guy Dill did the gates, 3 gates for the Sony Music project.
And you brought had a lot of work from students in the area.
And Ed Moses and I worked on a gymnasium together. That was a successful project.
And you have an artist's work on this piece as well.
Right. Let me explain this a little bit. This project is, it's actually an existing industrial building, a bow truss structure. And this will be the digital special effects. And we're working with Michael Hayden, who's a light artist, light sculptor, I should say, and he's going to use holographic diffraction gratings, and this screen will hide a bunch of mechanical equipment that we're going to have to sit on the roof. And it will diffract into various colors, and should be very exciting.
This will be the main focus then. You're giving your building, per se, to an artist who's collaborating with you.
Right. I'm very interested in that word that you're using, that synergy of architect and artist working together, so that it isn't like, oh, here's a spot and you can plop down a sculpture,
Exactly.
or there's a place and put on a mural. I'm really looking at it from a very integral way. And currently, I'm working with Erica Rothenberg on an LA City branch library, which is also a collaboration.
Do the artists bring something different that, say, another architect in your office couldn't bring to you?
Definitely. They're always, I mean, art does a lot of things, but what artists do is they make you look at something or think about something that you wouldn't normally think of. And as architects, we're doing our own art in our own medium, but I love that collaboration where there's always just a new way of looking at something.
They have that understanding. There's another project, Robertson Branch Library.
Exactly, and what we have here is we have a form that this element will be clad in copper, and Erica is going to do a series of quotes.
Oh, this is the one Erica's working on
yes,
with you?
and a series of quotes that will be actually applied to the outside, and some of the quotes are actually quite interesting. Let me just take a second and read 1 or 2. Here's one quote, a more serious one. "We ought to read only the kind of books that would wound and stab us. A book should be the axe for the frozen sea inside us." From Franz Kafka. But here's another one. "I never forget a face, but in your case, I'll make an exception." Groucho Marx. So you can see there's...
She's going to mix everything.
It's going to be interesting, yeah.
Will you be able to see those
yes,
from outside?
Driving by and walking by.
That sounds fabulous. One of the things that architects always think about, I think architects think about, maybe it's unconscious, maybe they don't think about it, but I would think, to leave your mark on the landscape of the world. I mean, when you wanted to be an architect, did you think, I want to build big buildings and people will point to those and say, that's a Steven Ehrlich building?
The bigger the better, exactly.
Do you?
I mean, I think that there, you know, I haven't gone into a complete psychoanalysis of myself on this subject, but I think there is something satisfying to know that there is something that you are leaving behind, something that you are making a mark. But you know, in terms of what's important to me, it's that those buildings do enrich the lives of the people that use them. And so I don't see it as really a monument to myself. I see it as a place to be and a place that people will hopefully energize and enrich their own lives.
When they go, I think that when they go to a Steven Ehrlich building, what will they see that says, this is Steven Ehrlich? Do you have any things that are the same kind of mark in each building as you,
well,
or house?
Other than the fact that I seem to have a bridge fetish, bridges often appear in my projects. Other than that, I would say that the marks seem to be lots of light, very strong indoor-outdoor connection, a sense of in public buildings, a real desire to bring people together into perhaps courtyards or atrium spaces. But I would say that I wouldn't say that I have a clear, specific, formal language that I always repeat.
Awesome.
But there is a clarity. I tend to try to look for a simple and strong solution rather than overly complex solutions.
Well, we're going to start looking for your buildings and see if we can pinpoint them. And I want to thank Steven Ehrlich for being with us today. And
You're
thank
welcome.
you for watching Joan Quinn, etc. And we'll see you next time.